Hey, Mr. Scott.
Good afternoon.
It's
Who is that that said hey?
Juliet.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Don't ask.
I'm sorry.
I need to figure out how to change this name.
Oh, the Matt Sonar's name or Shanika Bynum?
Yeah, Matt Snars.
There you go.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Holmes, can you give me a call, please?
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to give it a few more minutes until Mr. Johnson arrives. Mr. Johnson, do we need to get started or do I need to wait for Mr. Barnes? Ms. Smith Freshwater says she would not be able to attend tonight.
Okay. Mr. Langloss, how are you?
I'm doing good. I think we can wait a few minutes because I don't think we're going to have quorum right now either. So,
Okay. All right. We don't have any other than the action on the minutes. We don't have any other items to vote on. And we do need someone to take the minutes if Smith Freshwater is not here.
yeah, I can take minutes if she's out.
Okay.
Go grab something to write with better.
Okay.
Hi there. This is Amy Jones, and I don't know if
this is a comment for Mr. Johnson or maybe Ms. Black is the new Matt. I'm not sure. But I just joined this committee. Last month was my first meeting. And I don't think I'm on the emails because I haven't received anything and I didn't know who to reach out to because the only person I'd ever talked to before was Matt. And so, yeah, I'm not sure who to connect with on that.
Rebecca, this is Terry Porter Holmes. And I know Matt did let me know that you're new and we will get you updated on the emails. I thought that had happened prior to his departure because he updated the list. So nothing else has been sent out yet that I'm aware of except for the agenda. That's the only thing that has been sent out since the last meeting.
Okay.
I
thought so.
And
That week that was being planned, that didn't happen. The emails about that weren't going around.
What week?
For Community Development Week.
The Community Development Week, yeah.
There was a poll. Well, first of all, good evening, everybody. And we'll get the meeting started in a second. But there was a poll that we had sent. And I think that there were only a few people who actually voted in the poll.
Okay.
And I think the date that was decided was that Tuesday of that week that they would visit one of the centers. But I do not, we're gonna find out today whether or not that did happen. I knew I wasn't able to make it because I had to teach. So we'll find out from Ebony and those who were on that committee whether or not that they actually went and what they saw. So.
Cool. Yeah. And so it sounds like Ms. Porter Holmes is going to make sure that the email list is updated because I didn't see the poll or the invite to the site, which is fine, obviously. But I guess going forward, we can get that fixed.
And
Absolutely.
Amy, if you would do this for me, Amy, could you just put in the chat your email address to make sure I have it correct? And I'm going to get you squared away.
Yeah,
have you
perfect.
gone through any orientation or anything for the meeting? I mean, for the board?
I did my oath and I joined this meeting last month and that's it.
Okay, so you haven't had any onboarding or anything. Okay.
I received paperwork in an email that I read and I have access to the wiki and stuff, but nothing more formal than that.
Okay.
I'll add my email though. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully everybody is doing well. We will call this meeting to order if we have quorum, which I think that we do based on the number of people that I see. And let me see if Alicia is going to be here.
She's not going to be on, Madam Chair, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. She's not going to be here.
10-4. All right, then.
Brian Langloss is going to take minutes.
Awesome. What a great executive team that I have that hold it down for me. I probably should retire and give this up to Mr. Johnson. But we'll hold tight. If we can do the roll, do we have a roll?
Yes. Lavon Barnes,
President.
Shanika Bonham.
Present.
Okay, and I apologize if I mispronounced anybody's name in advance. Rachel Eberhard.
Here, thanks.
And this one I'm going to pronounce wrong. Leah, is it Ifid?
Eford, yeah, pretty close. We're getting there, but yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Dr. Monica Hosley Hyman. Donna A. Hughes. Brian Langloss.
I'm here.
Thank you. Carl Newman. Jillian Raleigh.
So Jillian Raleigh has resigned. We might have an old list.
Thank you for that. Adam, is it Shada? SADDA?
Sada, and let me see. I do not see Adam here.
Alicia Smith Freshwater asks for an excuse absence. Ebony in West.
Do not see her either.
Okay, and Miss Amy Jones, do you go by Amy or Rebecca Jones?
Amy,
Amy Jones, okay.
thank you.
Roll call is complete.
Thank you. We could pull up the agenda. Thank you, Ms. Black. Right. So I've called this meeting to order, and so hopefully everybody has received the minutes. And if you have received those minutes and do not see any corrections outside of any grammatical corrections, I will take a motion to approve the minutes.
Lavon, I didn't get any minutes with Alicia's email this month, but
I just had the agenda too. Yep.
That, according to the email, it stated that Ms. Freshwater would send the minutes this morning, Monday morning, but I don't see that I've received them.
I feel like I got an email from her this morning. I will check.
I'll also say I didn't receive any minutes for this either.
Let me just double check. Maybe she might have sent it to me. She did not send those minutes. However, if we could put in the minutes, Dr. Hosley Hyman will be late to the meeting tonight. I have received excused absences from Adam Saba, Donald Hughes, and Seth Kendall.
You can close that one. If you can close it.
And those are all the excused absences that I have personally received. Okay, so go back to this. All righty. So we will approve the minutes when we get them in the next at our next meeting. We'll approve the minutes for last month and for this month's meeting. Ms. Black, if you can go back to sharing your screen. Thank you so much. So I will pass this off to our esteemed Durham Housing Authority Chair, Mr. Anthony Scott, for operations update. Good
afternoon. For this opportunity to come before you all again.
Your sound is distorted.
Might be an internet problem.
You might need to log out. Yeah, you might need to log out and log back in.
Yeah, switch from my switch over to Wi-Fi. Yeah, reception in my office. So give me 1 second.
And while we're waiting for Mr. Scott, just want to put a reminder out there that early voting does start, I think, this week, and encouraging this body to vote, and also encourage your friends and neighbors, family members to vote if they are in this state. We have several members of our committee who are actually running for office or trying to get appointmentships. So wish them the best while they're going through that process as well.
Maybe I'm gonna need to log out and log back in.
That sounds good. That sounds good. You can log out and log back in. We'll be waiting for you. Don't worry about it. We ain't gonna adjourn the meeting without you. Ms. Black, if you could put back the agenda, see if we can tackle some other things while we wait for Mr. Scott to log out, log back in.
You can't tackle too much because I got to pull up Mr. Johnson's stuff. So
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
Yes, ma'am. You let me know. I'm gonna follow you. All right.
I'm sorry. Go to your new business then. I'm coming back.
All right. So we'll wait for Mr. Scott. We'll give Mr. Scott another minute or two to get his technology right. While we're waiting for that, is there any good news, any announcements that anybody would like to share, or anything that people have going on? I know that Councilmember Williams is online. You might want to give us a few minutes of your time to talk about what's going on in City Council.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Let's see, I'm going to look at the agenda here, but I'm going to pretend I see your beautiful faces. Yeah, we have quite a few things going on at the city. It is definitely keeping us busy. We're dealing with significant population growth. We're dealing with a housing market that is haywire. And as this population is growing and the housing is unstable, we're dealing with a lot of criminal activity, as we have continued to deal with over the last couple of years. We cannot let this be normalized. And we got to continue to be engaged. You know, there are 300 and something thousand people in this county, and I think everybody can contribute to how we can solve this. Now, I'm not trying to, have a committee where it's, what's the saying? A camel is a horse designed by a committee. We got to, come together and put some real ideas and practical ideas in place. And then we need the city and the entire county to support that. And we're working on that. I'm specifically working on more of an economic focus. I know we talk a lot about affordable housing, building affordable units. I do believe that we're getting to the point where we do need to continue talking about this, but it appears that we are starting to lose the practicality around it, where we're not engaging the other components of that conversation. The city of Durham has 26,000 job vacancies in it. The city alone has over 400 job vacancies. And, we got to talk about folks getting access to those jobs and people taking advantage of those jobs, and also the jobs doing what they need to do to ensure, that they are accessible to everybody at all levels. We recently met with Apple and asked them to commit, to hiring justice-involved folks, and they committed to 800 justice-involved folks. So, moves like that can make a significant difference. And of course, some of the other things we're working on, we're in budget season. So we are, the staff are doing their magic right now, trying to, include as much as possible. And we'll see what we're presented with in June. This is one of those things where there's so much going on, it's hard to cover everything. So let me just say I'm available for questions.
Is Mr. Scott back?
Thank you. Anybody have questions for Councilmember Williams while we have him? I guess I'll have a few. What is the approximate timetable for the appointmentship to fill former Councilmember Reese's seat? You have a
You're muted.
y'all have, oh shoot.
So
Am I muted?
No, it's
I was
Councilman
muted.
Williams.
It's actually coming up. I think within, I don't know the exact date, but while we're on this call, let me just kind of look at that. But it's coming up within the next week or two where I want to say May 2nd, actually. Monday and Tuesday of next week, I believe we'll be inviting folks in, inviting the interviewees in, and we'll state the process where, they'll be able to bring supporters, I believe, and speak on their behalf. So pretty excited about that. We have some candidates that are, qualified, and looking forward to working with whoever, we end up choosing. It's an interesting process because we don't talk about it, we can't talk about it. So it's, we listen to the interviews, listen to their supporters, and may the person with 4 votes win.
Are you able to, I guess, discuss your personal, what do you look for? What are you looking for within this process, within the candidates? What are you wanting to hear or needing to hear as far as how you are going to go about making your decision to fill that seat? Now, I know you can't talk about who you're leaning towards, but just in general, what is your personal preferences as far as like what are you needing to hear as far as the candidate?
Yeah, so
I can build on that a tiny bit. Like, is it more personal characteristics or policy positions?
Yeah, I'm one of those that actually read all 21 applications. That flight to London and back was long, so I read all of them. I am looking for. I'm also not one to say you must have all the experience in the world to run for office. One thing that I do prioritize is your commitment. How do you describe your commitment? But realistically, what I've learned since I've been in there is you do have to have some understanding of policy. As a matter of fact, you need to have a great deal of understanding when it comes to policy, but policy is so broad, So for me, it's more so about aptitude. It's about how do you adapt to all of this information so fast, and this person is coming in at an extremely interesting time. Just like Mayor O'Neill and I came in, and the first thing they said is, brace yourself, there's a case for Darryl Howard. And now we all see how that is, and it's teaching me a lot because you have to make these decisions within legal parameters while you have your personal feelings. Is like your hands are tied, and you have to be, victim to the media only telling their side of the story. You can't talk about it. It's a lot to process. This person is coming in not only dealing with the Darryl Howard case, and they're going to learn some real eye-opening facts when they get in there. They're also going to have to vote on a budget. So I hope that they are really studying what's been proposed and looking at our guidelines that we set forth in the budget as well. But also someone that also, has a vision for the city, and how you're going to contribute to what's happening from your perspective. So I'm looking for a really good balance of commitment, just how well you process information and how familiar you are with city level policy. So those are some of the things. And then also looking at, what do we need on council? What are we missing? And what are we, not only what we're missing on council, but also what do we have? And that's with, from the council level all the way down to staff level. So literally it's human resource and capability.
I appreciate those answers, and we look forward to seeing that process come to fruition. We'll pivot back to Mr. Scott. Another council members will still be on for a little while, and if we can get back to him and you have questions, we'll be asking them at that time. So we want to give Mr. Scott the floor, and then after Mr. Scott,
home Durham.
Ma'am? I don't know. We'll go to Mr. Scott and then Mr. Johnson right after Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can everyone see my slide? says DHA and agenda?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for those of you who saw my city council presentation, this covers largely a lot of the same thing. And I wanted to first set the stage by making sure that all members of this committee knew, in fact, what it is that we at DHA really do and who our residents actually are. So this slide shows you, gives you a breakdown of the various residents that we have at various programs. So first and foremost, you have public housing, which is what most people commonly know. You also have the Housing Choice Voucher Program, or Section 8 as it's often referred to, and then our affordable housing programs. These are all three programs, have totally different ways of getting funded for the most part. And what's important to recognize is that we have over 4,000 families and a little over 9,000 people. Our more recent numbers showing what our average households look like in public housing, average income is just over $10,000. They pay about $245 per month in rent, et cetera. With the rest, you'll see that on average, over $12,000 and about $309 per month in rent is what our residents pay. The program, all of these programs are income-based. That is that you pay a percentage of your income. It's based on 30% of your income. So you can clearly see, both based on the incomes that you see here and the amount of rent that we're paid, that our housing is definitely one of the more higher housing in demand. And this is giving you a further breakdown of what our families are like. In essence, what you'll see if you go over to this far column, in the public housing program, you'll see we have 52% of our residents are actually 17 and under. And we have about 8% or so of our households that are 62 and over, and you have the grouping in the middle. And as you go across the board, looking at our other programs, and this is a compilation of all that, so you see about 42% of our families, they're comprised of children. And a good 12% of our families are comprised of seniors. And I often make that point because a lot of times when people talk about public housing, one of the things that comes up is, well, what are people going to do to get out of public housing? In some cases, we have some families that aren't going to get out of public housing because they're not really in a position to do so. And here's one of the key reasons as to why. Quite a few of our households are actually disabled. And so that means they are, in most cases, they are restricted in what kind of jobs they can have and what kind of income they can actually generate because they're actually disabled head of households. So you can see the number shows that we are about 40% of our heads of household are actually disabled heads of household at various age ranges. So it's an important factor when you look at who makes up public housing, and I say public housing in this case to mean the voucher program as well as the affordable housing program, but who of our DHA residents, what our households actually look like. It tells a little different story than perhaps the narrative that's out there or what people may have in their minds. So with that said, I want to also talk about us as an agency and what challenges we're continually be faced with. You of course hear a lot in the news about DHA and what we're doing and what we're not doing in more cases than not. But one of the big challenges that we have continued to face now going on at least 3 years is labor. Now everyone kind of understands the labor issues because the Great Resignation, as it's been termed these days, has impacted every industry you can think of. Housing authorities are no different. And I say housing authorities because this is an issue that all of our fellow housing authorities have across the country. We're all facing these labor challenges for the most part. And for DHA, it's been going on for at least 3 years, and certainly it was exacerbated by the pandemic to the point that we have over 30 vacancies for 100. I'm sorry, I should have changed this, but it's not 92 positions, it's actually 102 positions. We have 30 some vacancies for 102 positions. We are backfilling some of those with temps. So it's not like there's no one there, but we have not found permanent hires for at least 30 plus positions. It is a major challenge that we've been dealing with. That includes 11 vacancies for the 42, actually it says units, I apologize, it should say 42 positions that are in the property management area. So these are ongoing challenges that we see on the labor side. We also look to supplement that labor with hiring contractors. We advertised twice in 2021 to try to get contractors. We only got one qualified bidder, and that person was selected. And his company has been working with us to help with some of the repair issues, but it's still not nearly enough for the amount of challenges that we have overall, given the age and conditions of some of our properties. And then, of course, there's always the issue of just, money. We are struggling with having enough money to do the repairs. That's more of a historical issue, and I'll talk a little bit about that coming up. But in essence, if you have any idea how public housing is actually funded, we are 100% funded by the federal government. We do not receive money for our operations from the city. And that's the case for all housing authorities. We're federal agencies, federally funded agencies, I should say. And the money to pay for our ongoing operations and pay for our major repairs, all are annual allocations that we get from Congress through HUD to the housing authorities. And I won't take the time today to go over that, but basically we have struggled with getting the appropriate amount of funding for at least the last 30 years from Congress, as they've sort of essentially kind of thrown their hands up around public housing and have not adequately funded us. On the plus side, some of our recent hires have been very strong hires and have made significant contributions to helping to continue to turn our agency around. Those positions include our new director of housing operations. This person is over top of all of our managers for the public housing. She's been on board now for about 6 months, and she's been doing a great job of getting to having us become a lot better operations. We've hired an in-house staff attorney. We have a communications manager, and she's been critical at helping us to communicate well with our residents and vice versa. On the work order side, you heard a lot about our lack of completion of our work orders over the past year or two. We implemented a single work order call line. So you're not, if you're in Oxford Manor or Cornwallis, instead of calling that property management office, we're now having everyone call one single line. It's managed by a third party, and that third party is able to put that work order in the system. That resident who calls in immediately gets a work order number so they can be tracked. These are all things that we struggled with being able to do. And as a result of that, we've had a high in the last couple of years of over 1,600 work orders that we were behind in. Now that number is down to less than 13. And those are all in vacant units at this point. So even though they're really not impacting the family directly. We've been able, over the last 4 to 5 months, been able to keep our work orders repairs into less than 30 days. We've also just overall have done some improvements to our housing operations. I mentioned our new director of housing operations. She's been phenomenal at putting new policies, procedures, and protocols in place so that we can improve on how we're able to address our basic functions with our residents and with the agency as a whole. And we also had a change. We have a new CFO. I neglected to mention that when I did this presentation. He said, "Hey, you forgot about me." But he's been on board now for about 6 to 8 months. And so he's been working to retool, or actually we started the retooling of our finance department last year under my old CFO, and he's been able to come in and continue in that process. So I want to talk about this thing called the recovery agreement. DHA has been deemed a troubled agency based on our scoring in 2018. So what happens is, in the year that you're in, they'll do their review and score you on the previous year. So we're now in 2022. So now they're actually looking at scoring us for 2021. Because of the pandemic, our rating had been halted for the last 2 years. So that's why you see a 2018 score, not something more recent, because HUD halted all inspections and all scoring based on that. This scoring system, called the Public Housing Assessment System, or FAS, is done annually for all housing authorities. It's on a 100-point scale, and it has 4 basic areas in which we are graded: financial, management, physical inspections, and capital funds. And you can see the points for each of those. So we are now in the process. HUD has just started for the first time in this year to do the scoring for housing authorities in 2021. And you'll hear me talk about housing authorities, and that's because these are national issues. It's not just a Durham issue when it comes to issues of funding and how we do our scoring and things like that. Those are national issues and not just a Durham issue. So with this failed rating that we had in 2018, we then had to negotiate and sign a recovery agreement with HUD. That was done in February of this year, and it outlined some very specific accomplishments that we have to complete within a 2-year period. And there are 3 basic things. One, we have to increase our occupancy to 95%, improve our unit conditions to a passing score of at least a 60. That's a minimum score that you can get considered passing. That's based on a 100-point scale. And they want us to remove Mcdougal Terrace from the public housing inventory. And I'll talk about each of these 3 in a little bit more detail. So one is increasing our occupancy to 95%. Some of the things that we are graded or rated on, beyond this, but just a whole bunch of things that we are graded and rated on, it's what DHA is or what housing authorities are at the end of a fiscal year. In our case, that's December 31st. In the case of occupancy, it is based on what you have averaged over the course of the year. So rather than looking at where we are in December, they're going to look at each month, how many units have we leased? Have we leased at least 95% of our units on average for that 12-month period? It's a little bit different than where are we in December of that particular year. So an example here is that if we have 1,000 units, and obviously there's 12 months in a year, that means there's 12,000 unit months in which we could lease apartments. We have to have at least 95% of that, which means 11,400 what's called unit months. And that's where we have to be able to accomplish it, getting at 95% based on the number of units we have. This is kind of important because sometimes we have units that come into inventory and units that leave inventory. So for example, if there was a unit that had a fire, well, that unit would then come off of inventory until the period of time in which that unit can get repaired and back online. In some cases, we have damage that's so severe that it takes months and months to get a unit repaired and back online. So that would be reduced from that total unit months total for the number of months that is actually offline. That's why this designation is a little more accurate than just saying, where were you at the end of a given month? Currently, we stand at 9, actually, as of this past month, as of March, we're now actually above 94%. We're now 95% for the end of the year, or excuse me, year to date. So we're making great progress on that particular requirement that we have with the recovery agreement. Next up, however, is unit conditions. So each year, housing authorities are actually graded by having an inspection of all of its inventory. And it's not a unit by unit inspection. It is a kind of a sampling inspection. And those inspections are based on 5 key areas: the overall site of that property, the building exterior, the building systems, like electrical, plumbing, those sorts of things, common areas if you have one, and then the actual unit itself. Historically, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've struggled with the site conditions and unit conditions. So already this year, they have started inspections. We've had 3 properties that have been inspected, and those 3 properties have not fared very well thus far. And we kind of expected that in some respects on some of the exterior stuff, because we've had a concerted effort to make sure that the units on the interior were more habitable. However, the scoring and the way they do the scoring, we're seeing scores for those 3 properties that are still very low. We're disappointed in both the scoring that we received, but also the approaches that they've had. But it is the way they do it, so we can't complain because that's the way they sort of do it. Some of it's more subjective, but overall, we are seeing that so far our scoring is still lower than what we want. We know we'll be in better position next year, particularly with the new staff leadership that we have there and the amount of work that we've been able to do, particularly around the work orders. But because we signed this thing in February and they started coming out in March, we're going to see some low scores, we think, for the remaining properties that we have. Additionally, I just talked about these physical inspections that they do. There's yet another element to this. So if a building scores below 60, HUD tells us that we have to take our physical needs assessments. These are assessments that are done every 5 years. And what they're designed to do is to go in and look at the conditions of the building and make a determination of what work needs to get done over a 20-year period, including immediate things that have to happen. They then will give us an estimated cost of what it takes to maintain those buildings over the next 20 years. So for any of the properties that fall below 60, we have to do this physical needs assessment. And then following that, we have to make sure that we include those items listed in that physical needs assessment, as immediate repairs in particular, over a 5-year capital plan. So housing authorities on the public housing side get 2 major pots of money. One is for our ongoing operations and maintenance, and then one is for the capital fund. The capital fund, as its name says, deals with those major items: a new roof, having to paint the exterior of an entire building, replacing plumbing, electrical, things like that. Those are considered your capital items. We get annually a capital fund allocation. That allocation for the last few years has been around $3 million that we had to invest in our properties. So with that, HUD is saying to us, you have to develop your plan over the 5 years, which we do anyway. We have to do a capital fund plan, and we spend down those capital funds based on that 5-year plan. And HUD says, basically, we want you to do your plan based on your more recent capital funds. Well, the good news is that we were already in the process of doing physical needs assessments. We started this actually back at the beginning of the year, and currently we have some preliminary results of that, one of which I'll talk about shortly, and that's Mcdouble Terrace. Lastly, I think on the unit and conditions, it talks about how we have to improve those conditions. Again, I talked about if we have to get a minimum of 60 to consider standard or passing. If we fall below that, they're telling us that we need to have third-party property management in place by June 30th, 2023. The 3 properties that we have had inspections with so far: Cornwallis, Oxford Manor, and Club Boulevard. And the preliminary scores, and I think these are close to final, is that all 3 of those properties did in fact fail the inspection so far. The last item in our recovery agreement talks about the repositioning of Mcdouble Terrace. So somewhat fancy way of just saying, we need you to get Mcdouble Terrace out of the public housing inventory. Remember when I showed you those 3 programs that we have public housing, we have the housing choice voucher, and we have the affordable housing program. Well, there's if any of you followed any of the stuff we've been doing over the last couple of years, we've talked about RAD, or rental assistance demonstration. That's a program within HUD that allows us to switch from the public housing funded program to now the housing choice voucher funded program. And all it is just we're switching where the money comes from. And there's an important reason why a lot of housing authorities were excited about this RAD program. The first is we're no longer under the public housing funding program, because that program historically has been very, very poorly funded. Congress has really just decided to disinvest from public housing. But on the other hand, the voucher program, which when it comes to the subsidy portion, it really goes to private landlords. That program has been historically funded at close to its 100% funding need. So for housing authorities, we're excited about switching over to that funding source, because we knew we would get more consistent funding, and funding that's more accurately tied to rents being charged. In addition to the funding platform, we also get tools that we don't have in public housing. We could go after low-income housing tax credits. We could go to a bank and get a loan to do renovation work. You cannot do that under the public housing program. So we're excited about RAD. That's one of the reasons why we've been doing some of this work in the downtown area. We intend to do RAD for all of our properties anyway. But we started with the downtown properties because it was important to start with those that were at the highest value sites, and we could show developers that this is something that's worth investing in. And so we've seen some success there. Now we're going to be looking at Mcdougal Terrace, which was our plan anyway, to look at Mcdougal Terrace as the next site. HUD just memorialized it for us and said, we need you to do this, and we need you to do this essentially in the next 2 years. So we pushed back on that and said, HUD, we don't know how you expect us to accomplish that, because to say we're going to move everybody out in 2 years doesn't make a lot of sense, because we know how difficult it is to find other affordable housing, even within our public housing inventory. So what HUD says to us is that you need to give us a plan in 1 year, which is basically February of 2023, to show us how you're going to reposition Mcdougal Terrace. And where we are with Mcdougal is we want to tear down Mcdougal Terrace and rebuild it as a mixed income community, just as we have started doing in the downtown area already. And just to underscore why we think that is important, I talked earlier about these physical needs assessments, and they lay out what has to be done to a property over the next 20 years. Well, the one that we got for Mcdougal Terrace shows that we have $53 million of need over the next 20 years, including $2 million immediately. Now, you all remember the Mcdougal Terrace carbon monoxide crisis that we had. We put in $4 million to deal with the repairs associated just with the specifics around the carbon monoxide crisis. And another, I believe it's $1.5 to $2 million of other repairs since residents have been back. So when you start to look at the cost of Mcdougal Terrace, the fact that it's 70 years old, the fact that it is, was never built to be permanent housing, and all the other ills associated with public housing, you understand why we know that the best solution is that we tear down and rebuild Mcdougal Terrace. So I'm going to pause there, because I know I've been talking a lot, to see if there are any questions on this, any quick questions, and then I'll continue on with the rest of the information I want to share with you all.
Open the floor to the committee for questions.
Okay, I'm going to keep moving then. I do have much more to share, and then we can have more time at the end. So these are sort of program updates, a fresh start. This is a program that we started and really kind of hit our stride with as a result of the pandemic. And essentially, it is a way for us to work with our residents to avoid evictions. We had intended to hire a staff of 2 all along that would work with our residents to kind of be an intermediary for those who have not responded to requests to pay their rent, and we can have that particular staff do outreach. Well, during the pandemic, that became virtually critical. We wanted to do everything possible to avoid eviction filings. This is above and beyond the moratoriums and all that stuff, because we knew the moratoriums would end at some point. And we didn't want families to be in a position where, as soon as the moratorium ended, they had this very, very heavy burden of trying to figure out how they were going to be able to pay their back rent. So we were able to expand our, what we call the housing stability team, because of additional funding that we got from COVID. And so we beefed up that staff to a total of 6. And throughout the process, we had a lot of staff turnover, but we were able to commit to having 3 permanent positions that will continue in this work. That team of people conducted every type of outreach you can think of: emails, phone calls, text messages, good old-fashioned snail mail, door knocking, social media contacts, everything that we can think of to pass the word that it was important that families applied for the available federal funding to curb their arrears. First, there was a program that was being administered by the county, which is typically called ERAP 1. And then secondarily, there was a program that was funded through the city and administered by Legal Aid. During the pandemic, we had about half of our households who were unable to pay their rent fully. As of February of 2022, we still had over 700 families that were behind in their rent. And of course, those numbers fluctuated throughout the pandemic. We continued our extensive outreach. We pleaded with every community advocate, every church, every organization, every individual that we could to encourage our residents to apply for assistance. So this will give you a little bit of a snapshot of what did occur with all those families that were behind. There were 306 families that applied under the ERAP 1, that is Emergency Rental Assistance Program, was what ERAP stands for. That was administered by the county. And through those 306 families, we were able to receive almost $578,000. ERAP 2, which is a city version of that, we estimated that there's $450,000 that would be reflected for the 286 families that applied. We're still waiting to get our update from that partner as to where we are, but so far we had received about $37,000. In addition to that, we still found that we had over 400 families that had either applied but had not received any information back yet, or that we simply were not getting them to respond to our request to work with or to apply for these funds. But we were able to get them through another huge push to enter in what's called repayment agreements. And these are basically agreements by that household that they will pay their rent and they will also pay a portion towards rent that's owed. And what that looks like is this. About 75% of the folks that sign repayment agreements owe less than $2,000. And more than a quarter, well, not more than a quarter of that, 75%, a quarter of that owes less than $500. About a quarter of that owes between $500 and $1,000, and another 23% owes between $1,000 and $2,000. So we saw that we had, in a lot of cases, a lot of people that owed relatively small amount of money. I say that, but keep in mind that our average rent paid is $245. So for a lot of families, when you're making about $10,000 or your income is about $10,000, an additional $500 that you owe is still a pretty high hurdle. Just to talk about how these repayment agreements are structured, 82% of those are $50 or less, right? So a good portion of them are paying a relatively small amount, but again, that's about 20% of what the average family is paying. So it's still a big hit in some respects. But we tried to work out payment agreements that were manageable by those families. And we're going to continue to have our housing stability team work with those families to make sure that they're able to continue to pay these payments on time so they don't end up falling in a situation where they may find themselves at risk of an eviction filing. And then lastly, I'll share with you, this is the time frame in which those families are looking to pay that money back. About 26% of them are looking to pay, have been caught up and paid completely out within a year. 21% of them are paying within 2 years. 16% are paying within between 2 and 3 years. And then 22% are paying over 5 years. So still long periods of time that we're seeing families having to pay additional money to make up for their arrears rent. We are continuing to work with those families. We are going to have another program that we are looking to roll out that will help in reducing some of this. But we'll have more on that in the next month or so. But it's been a struggle for our families during the pandemic. We all understand that. But we also know that there were funds available for families, and we found it difficult to get families to apply. And so with our last gasp push, families were able to at least get into repayment agreements who were not, in fact, getting assistance elsewhere. And I should mention that some of you remember I showed you this slide where we're just not sure how many of these folks are going to get funded through this program. So some of these 431 are also folks that are in this category. We just don't know how many at this point. So those numbers could change dramatically, actually, when the funds are received from the city program. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about homeownership. We have gone into a partnership with Habitat for Humanity for 2 sites that are fairly close, but 2 sites that are 37 lots. These are from the old Hope 6 program. We were required to have homeownership for low-income families. However, you all know what's going on in Durham. It is very difficult to find a builder who's interested in taking on building a house and selling it for $150,000 or even $200,000, because they can make more money doing a rehab And so it was a struggle even years ago when we first started this. But Habitat was one of the entities that applied for the request for proposals that we put out. We were very excited about that because we thought they were the perfect partner, just given what their mission is and given what our objective was. This was a great partnership for us. They finished the first phase, which is on Laurel Street, near the Edgemont Elms area. It was 20 lots here, and these houses are now finished. If you get a chance to go by Laurel Street, please go by and look at that brand new street with homeownership opportunities for people, allowing them to build equity. The second phase of this is over in the, what's the name of that community, Reginald? I'm drawing a blank now.
You're talking about South, the Eastway Village?
Eastway Village, thank you, sir. This is another 17 lots that are there. This project is going very well as well. If you have a chance, go by and take a look at that. You can see that they have probably about half of the houses finished. They're actually going to, this weekend on Saturday, they're going to do a sort of an opening celebration of the success of the program. So if you have an opportunity, feel free to come by. One of the things I want to mention is that the average home cost here is $185,000. That's a home range of between $115,000 and $235,000. The average household income that was able to purchase a home last year was a little over $31,000, but this year it's a little over $40,000. And when you see the houses and you think about someone at an income that low being able to get a quality home like this, it is a great thing to see. And I have to mention, especially since he's on the line, that our partner with the city was instrumental in allowing us to be able to make this a success in terms of the assistance that they were able to give Habitat so that these homes could meet the affordability levels. Next up, I want to talk about Connect Home. This is actually a 10-year-old program now. It started under the Obama administration, and it was designed to focus on how housing authority families could have access to the internet. DHA was one of the original 39 housing authorities that were accepted into this program. The good news is that we were out there, we were ahead of the curve. The bad news is the program just doesn't have any money. It was really about connecting people. Such as Spectrum with their sort of low income internet program. But what we quickly found with a lot of these types of companies is that the speed of internet that they were offering for $10 a month wasn't nearly enough to deal with someone who is working from home or someone who is, as we knew during the pandemic, who are trying to get online and do Zoom meetings like these, right? It just wasn't something that was adequate. But when the pandemic hit, our city manager, who was the deputy city manager at the time, has always been our partner on this and very committed. We were able to utilize some of the funding that DHA received and some of the funding that the city received as part of the COVID monies to actually take this to another step. That is that we are providing free high-speed internet to all of our DHA communities. The ones that have been committed to thus far means that 1,200 DPS students will have free access to high-speed internet. The communities that have that high-speed internet so far that are complete and already in operation includes Maureen Road, Mcdougal, Oxford, Hoover. You can see the list here. Those that we're expected to complete this month, it's Club Boulevard and Edgemont Elms. And the future sites with additional funding are going to be the sites that we're doing our renovation work on, our redevelopment work on, Liberty and Main, Forest Hill Heights, and the JJ Henderson. We paused on those because obviously construction is about to begin there. But as a part of that construction, we'll have free high-speed internet at those sites as well. Next, I want to talk about our Jobs Plus program. This was a $2.3 million 4-year grant that we received for Mcdouble Terrace. We actually applied for this grant 3 different years, and we were finally successful in winning this grant. What it does essentially is 2 key things. For those residents that are unemployed at the start of the program, and if you become employed and you're part of Jobs Plus, your rents do not go up as your income goes up. Typically, that's what happens is because again, it's based on 30% of your income. So if your income goes up, then your rent payment goes up. Your income goes down, then your rent payment goes down. With Jobs Plus, it is encouraging residents to get jobs and also promising that their rent will not increase in the same way. So it's a very exciting program. In addition to that, we are providing all types of services to our residents to get them prepared to enter the job market. Everything from, the basic things of, how should you show up and teaching them how to behave at work, but also legitimate training on things like how do you access the internet and Microsoft certifications and things like that. We have over 25 community partners that are working with us on this program and that have committed to it. So we are very excited about where we are. And we are 1 year into this now. And this is, well, a little bit more than a year actually, because it started in February of 21. But this is a year over year comparison of April of 2021 compared to April of 2022. And I'll just bring your attention to a couple of things. One, the average income of JPP, Jobs Plus program participants, has been $13 an hour. That's better than what it has been. We certainly want to see that number go higher, but we're excited that folks are actually getting to work and that the percentage of unemployed residents has dropped by 11% at Mcdougal Terrace. So that's definitely showing that we're seeing some progress. And just to bring that point home, this is the average annual earned income. And by that, we mean income in which you are employed was $2,730 a year ago. And now it has doubled in 1 year because of folks who are participating in the Jobs Plus program. So we've been very pleased with the excitement that we've seen in residents and being a part of this. We have about 106, I think, residents who are part of the Jobs Plus program right now. And we expect to see that to continue to grow, as well as one of my goals is to see this number go significantly higher than $13 an hour. So that's it for the program updates. And then the last thing I'll talk to you guys about is our physical development stuff that's happening. You guys have heard about Ddnp, DHA's downtown and neighborhood plan. It includes these 3 clusters of sites, plus 2 city sites, Hunt Street Station up here to the north, South Side down here to the south, the Fayette Place site that's gotten a lot of attention of late, the Liberty Street and 519 East Main Street, we don't use that word anymore, and then our DHA offices, Forest Hill Heights, and then the JJ Henderson. So I'm gonna go through this quickly, not to bore you, because I know a lot of you have heard about this, but in essence, in 2019, we launched this program, which would turn 447 existing public housing units into over 2,500 units of either newly constructed or renovated units. And this would take us about 10 years to do, and it's well over $500 million. This shows you a map of where those different sites are and what the plans were in 2019 for what we could do on those sites. And this is a breakdown of the number of phases, the estimated budget amounts. And again, this is in 2019 that we put this out. And I always show this slide because one of the things that I always say is that these numbers will change. They are going to change because it's the nature of development. And I want to show people where we started and then give you a sense of where we are now, because the numbers will change, phases will change, things are going to change because that is the nature of development. So here's where we are right now with all of those grand plans. So first up is the rehab of the existing JJ Henderson building, which is a 9-story building, has 177 units. And then on that same physical site, we said, let's just add some more units. So we're looking at doing a second phase here, which is now being called the Joyce, named after Joyce T. Nichols, the first Black woman to graduate from Duke's Physician's Assistance Program, which just happens to be across the street from this. And this is a rendering of that JJ Henderson original building. You can just see it peeking out here at the top, and then the new construction of the Joyce. This is a $19 million development deal. It includes $3 million from the city. We also have some aggressive WMBE goals here for our minority and women-owned businesses. The project now is 28% complete, and these are our actual numbers of where we are with the MBE and WMBE currently. Those numbers will continue to increase as the project continues to go forward. And this is what it looks like. Actually, it's not even what it looks like now, because they've actually started the second story on this building. So if you have a chance to go by Moorhead and Duke Street, you will see the construction of the joist. It is expected to be completed by the spring, no, actually January of next year. Moving on, this is the second site that we are looking to do development on. This is the Liberty Street and 519 East Main Street sites. This is an aerial of what it looks like now. There's this 9-story senior building, and then there's 106 units, and there's 108 units of family units. This will be reconfigured to look like this, and we'll go from 214 units to over 550 units. It will include a senior building, which is this building here. It includes family buildings. It'll have mixed income. It'll have commercial and retail on the ground floor. It'll have a nice open park entrance here. And most importantly, it'll be a site that actually integrates more with the city fabric. This is a rendering of the first phase of this building. It is scheduled to get started by the third quarter of this year. That's going to be 80 units, about $24 million, including a $6 million contribution as part of the bond funding from the city of Durham. And this is the second phase that you'll see in the third phase, actually called the Commerce Street Apartments. It is scheduled to get started construction the first quarter of next year. It's an approximately $52 million development with $8 million of that coming from the city bond funds. And then these are the last 3 sites that are scheduled for the Ddnp. We were just awarded these sites to 3 different developers in the end of last year. We are now in the process of beginning our negotiations with them. But this is what that process looked like. We issued an RFP in June of 2021. We gave 90 days for respondents to apply. We had pre-proposal meetings. We had community briefings. And a question deadline was in August. We received 11 proposals from 9 different interested parties. It was then reviewed by an 11-member review committee that did not include me. It included 6 DHA staff people, 3 city and county staff people, and 2 community members. And we selected the developers for that at the end of December. First up is the Dha Office Building. This seemingly 1-story building, it's really 2 here, is the existing criminal justice building. And then this is where our office is normally located. And by utilizing the land around the criminal justice building, we will be able to come up with a 258 unit development on this site. Now I'm gonna first pause and say, these are proposals as of now. We have yet to begin formal negotiations with these developers, so these numbers will change. I'm gonna repeat that. These numbers will change. They should change for the better, meaning we hope to get more units or more deeply affordable units. But there are lots of struggles, and I'll talk more about those shortly. So you can see with this is the $84 million plus development deal. This is the existing criminal justice building here. And you can see how we're wrapping around the criminal justice building, plus rebuilding the parking deck, replacing their parking, plus building more to serve the 258 units. It also will have about 42,000 square feet of office and retail space on the ground floor. Next is the Fayette Place site. The original proposal for this was over 500 units of housing and a grocery store that will be located on the Fayetteville Street corridor. The proposal that we received was for 774 units. Again, mixed income units, and also having a grocery store. We were really excited about the fact that they actually had a letter of interest from a grocer, and actually named grocer, as opposed to just, yeah, we hope to do it, but they really had someone who was already backing the idea of getting the grocery store there. And again, that's a $189 million development deal. And then lastly is the Forest Hill Heights development. That is a 14-acre site currently. It has 55 units on it. The Integral Group came up with a very, very exciting proposal for that included over 700 units of housing. 105 of those are going to be lower income housing. The others are going to be market rate, 72,000 square feet of commercial space, and 17,000 square feet of programmable space. That's the kind of open space you see here. So we're really excited about the proposals that we received. And very quickly, last thing I'll do is just share with you, I know lots of numbers, But here's the key thing I want you to take away from this is that these were our original projections of what we wanted to do in terms of affordability. We wanted to see 30% of our units we wanted to see 18% of our units that are going to be at least 30%. And we wanted to see 34% of our units that are between that 30 and 60 range, 22% at 60, and then 26% will be unrestricted. This is what has currently been proposed for each of the 3 sites. But let me take you to this chart, which I know is a little dizzying, but this shows you the entire Ddnp layout. So we started out with 447 units that represented the 18%. We were going to replace each and every one of those units in that downtown area. There, we wanted at least 30% of the units to be in that 50% range, 20% in the 80% range, and again, 23% to be unrestricted. So again, this is looking at all of the Ddnp proposals for the DHA sites. Doesn't include the 2 city sites, but just the DHA sites. And here's what our end results tell us in terms of where we are today. Doesn't mean it's finally where we are, but where we are today. So what you see in green represents sites that are underway right now. These are deals that have been baked, they've gotten financing, and they're ready to go. These are the ones that I've already showed you, the J.J. Henderson Rehab, the senior site, the Elizabeth Street, and then the second and third phase on the Liberty and Main Street sites. The proposals that we recently received reflect the gray here. And then there's the 4th and 5th phase that goes back to this Liberty and Main Street site. So these are not yet fully baked. So that's why they're over here instead of being in green over here. So what does all that mean? It means that we are going to get a total of 96 units that are going to be 50% and below, above what we wanted, what we had hoping to do. So that's a net plus for that 50 and 30% range. So we're very excited about the fact that they were able to come up with more units in that very low range. Secondly, it also means that we saw a significant dip in the number of units and that 80% range, that 60 to 80% range. 318 fewer units that we are going to be able to get there based on the proposals as we see them now. And then lastly, you can see that almost all of that loss of the 318 units is because of these 3 new proposals that they're not finding much, if anything, that they can afford to do in that 60 to 80% range. So we know that the challenges that they're facing is there's the commitment for the lower income units, but the cost of construction that has been going on since the start of the pandemic is making it very, very difficult for them to come up with units that fit here. It's kind of like, well, we can lose them here or we can lose them here. We're glad that they prioritize the lower income units, but we think that they can go back and sharpen the pencil and do a little bit better. But that's part of what those negotiations are all about, and we'll come to that. I'm going to leave this up just in case there's a question that somebody has that I have to go back to. But Mr. Barnes, I'm going to turn it back over to you to field any questions that we have. I know it's a lot of information. I talked a long time.
Mr. Scott, Brother Scott, honestly, that was a great. I think what you've been doing and your transparency is what Durham has desperately needed for a while. So I appreciate, and I'll speak on behalf of the committee, the work that your organization is doing to combat an issue that, you know, it's just going to be an ongoing thing. So I will open the floor up for any questions. I know it was a lot to digest, and you're probably still chewing on this a little bit. But if there's any questions, please, you can unmute yourself and ask for Scott.
Is the new building, the Joyce, going to be similar demographics to J.J. Henderson, like seniors and disabled folks primarily?
Yes, it will be. Thank you for reminding me of that. It will be a senior development.
And I guess when you're looking at like, I mean, you said that occupancy rates are 94, 95%. I'm wondering, are there wait lists for units? And are there certain units that are in higher demand, like the senior units or the family units or things like that? I mean, I'm sure this is all going into consideration as you're designing these new sites, but I'm just curious, kind of what you're seeing.
Yeah, we have a waiting list of about 5,000 right now. So that vacancy factor that we talked about is more issue of unit conditions than it is of demand. And if you look at the waiting list, it is broken down by bedroom. You will see that 1 bedrooms and studios make up 50% of our waiting list. And you will see just right on down the ladder. So 2 bedrooms are next, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms. So that is literally what our waiting list looks like. That was a part and a factor into how we thought about the building of units and being able to serve that. And that's because you're dealing with smaller families, and you're also dealing with a lot of seniors who also essentially have smaller families. So that's the 2 big demands. And it, frankly, it's true in the marketplace as well. When you talk to the private sector, when they're looking at what they're building a lot of 1s and 2s, because frankly, that's where the highest demand is, particularly when you, and this is on the market side, when you look at urban areas, they want, it's going to be the younger, smaller, either the younger crowd or the older crowd that wants to be downtown and walkable and those sorts of things.
Hi, this is, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Dr. Hyman. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Wonderful presentation. I'm just wondering, because there's so much to digest. Is there any way to get a copy of this sent to us too, so we can look at it further?
Absolutely. I'll provide the link. In fact, I think Ms. Juliet already has the link, and she can certainly send it out. This is our Dropbox doc, so no problem.
Thank you. And I especially like the area you were talking about with the grocery store being right there. Because again, some people, food insecurities and things like that is an issue. And sometimes people can't even get or have the money to get to a grocery store. So I thought that was a wonderful idea. Thank you.
That was, and I'll give credit where credit is due. That was a resident demand virtually that we needed to have a grocery store. So when we did our preliminary plans and put them out, we made sure that was a part of what we asked developers to be able to respond to.
Any other questions for Mr. Scott? Well, first, again, I'm always about jobs, and Mr. Scott knows that as I serve on 2 committees dealing with affordable housing here in Durham, it's great. We got the units. It's great that, we're servicing those who are in that 30% AMI. But as far as the jobs, I want to go back to your slide with jobs and the jobs count program.
The Jobs Plus program?
Jobs Plus program.
Right.
What has been some of the setbacks for that? Because when I hear about, what Councilmember Williams is saying about how many vacancies that we have and within the city and the county, are we working with and trying to work with Durham Tech or other job training programs to be able to have folks get those types of jobs as well? My concern, the reason why I'm saying is, my concern is that I believe in the program, but we also want to be able to get folks out of public housing. And I feel sometimes, sometimes these programs could be more of a reason to want to stay in public housing. When we want to get folks out of that generational, I'm going to be in public housing for generation after generation, and we get to home ownership, we get into full employment, we get into that salary and benefits and things of that nature. So what are we doing? What are some of the setbacks that you're seeing, as well as where else would you like to see this program, that particular program, go?
Right. So one thing I want to make clear about this program, it is only operating in Mcdougal Terrace because that's how the grant is structured. And it wasn't our choice. It's that it was the only site that qualified for this particular grant in DHA's inventory. But the issues that you raise are the same in no matter what. You know, we have what we call the shared prosperity program that was tied to our development overall, the overall Ddnp development. We wanted to make sure with all these hundreds of millions of dollars of construction that we're able to get people to work who were public housing residents, right? So we've been pushing to try to do that. And I mean, the struggle has been getting interest from our residents. We continue to try to do outreach around that, but it's a tough uphill battle. It's no different than, you know, Councilman Williams had talked about that there were, I believe it was 20 something, 2,600 or 2,400 jobs available in the city or something like that. That's what we're seeing all across the board. What we're trying to make sure we're able to do, and I talked about 25 plus partners. Those partners include Durham Tech, includes the city's workforce and the workforce investment group. And it includes every organization and entity that you can think of that has anything to do with jobs or job prep. Step Up Durham, you name it, they're all part of this overall Jobs Plus program. So our thinking and belief is that, okay, we got Mcdougal as a place in which we can only do the Jobs Plus program, but we can certainly look at how we expand this so that it is beyond Mcdougal and being used across all agencies. We just can't use that staff because their money is tied to the grant. So we're a year into this, and so we're starting to do some evaluation here, which is partly what you see here. But the struggle, honestly, is just getting residents to step up and come and be a part of these opportunities. So we're getting ready to do something else in the next couple of weeks. So we partnered, for example, with the Triangle Apartments Owners Association. And we're going to roll out a program in which they're going to provide training to anyone who's interested in learning about jobs available in the property management field. Now, obviously, we need that help. So I reached out to them a couple of years ago, really, and says, look, guys, how are you guys doing with your turnover rates and things like that? Because it's all property management. And they says, yeah, it's pretty brutal. And obviously it got worse during the pandemic. But I said, I talked to you guys a couple of years ago about how about us creating a training program that would not just serve DHA, but it serves every apartment in the city, right? County. And they said, yeah, we've been working on that. We just kind of paused because of the pandemic. So through our discussions, they agreed to launch this program in our public housing community. So we're literally going to do the training at our public housing sites to give them a pathway to getting into property management related jobs. The same thing on the construction side. I'm sorry, you try and get a word in.
Yeah, well, I guess my follow-up is, because I know Mr. Johnson had a percent too, is I hear you on that disconnect with the residents, right? And trying to plant seeds into those residents. Dr. Hyman, you might need to mute right quick.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And trying to plant those seeds of, you know, hey, employment is important. I think there's like probably misinformation out there that they might feel if they get fully employed, they might lose out on this, that, and the fourth. And clearly within this program, they will not lose out on, you know, what their rent is going to look like. I guess my other follow up that would be is if Mcdougal is scheduled in the next 2 to 3 years to essentially be torn down, is that jobs count grant going to extend to those residents after?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it will. It'll follow them.
That's all I had.
I think I have another one. I think you talked about different places where you're connecting. Have you connected with Durham Social Services too?
You know, Ben and I have talked quite a bit. We haven't talked in the last few months because of where our focus has been. But we meet every other month as part of another group, and we've been talking about some of these issues. But directly to answer your question, the answer is no. But we have a relationship and we have been talking about a lot of things, but directly to answer your question, no, we haven't.
Right, I was just wondering, because I'm the VP of that board, so I definitely can also put a plug in, but also in terms of like piggybacking on Mr. Barnes, what about looking at like peer mentors, right? So people who are already in the program going into the community, into the, Mcdougal, right? And talking about what and how the program has worked for them. Because sometimes it's like, I grew up in New York in the projects, and so there's only certain people that can come into the projects and talk to you about A, B, C, and D.
Right.
That's just what it is, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm just being real. So sometimes those peers can say, this is working for me. And as Mr. Bond said, like, you won't get your benefits cut off, but this is how, so I'm just throwing that out as another maybe innovative way to get it out. And to, if you get people who are actually in the program going and speaking to their neighbors about it, sometimes that works. Just throwing it out.
Well, no, actually, it's a part of the program design. So we do have people that we've hired to do just what you're talking about. They're actually hired to go out and talk to the residents and bring them in and let them be a part of this. They are, I think we call them the community ambassadors, but that's exactly what they do, and make sure they're bringing the credibility. There's a great video that I just saw this past week where some of our residents who are in the program are actually talking about, being in the program, how beneficial it's been. And so we're going to actually use that as a hook too. But we do actually, as a part of the program design, we actually hire residents to be a part of the recruitment for this.
Rachel has a question.
Yeah, thanks. This is a great deal of info. So I'm looking forward to reviewing everything that you've shared with us today. You alluded earlier to a concern I'd like to kind of circle back to, which are the concerns about the engagement and proposal process, specifically for the Fayette Place phase of all of this. So I was curious if you could kind of talk a little more about what DHA and the other partners are doing to engage with specifically the Hayti community and other community stakeholders that seem to be investing quite a bit of effort and energy behind their vision. And I'm curious to learn about what opportunities there are to kind of bring them into the fold here. Sure.
Well, frankly, we haven't heard from them from that perspective to say, how can we be more a part of this? So, we're happy to engage them in that way. But all of our respondents, and it was a part of the RFP, it was a requirement that you provide a plan for how you're going to engage the community. So as I said, what I showed you were what they proposed. There's a whole engagement component that is incorporated in their response to the RFP. So for the residents of Hayti, we're going to be meeting with them not very differently in some respects than what we did to create this original plan. We're not going to use the same amount of time, but we spent well over a year engaging residents and community members around the development of this original plan, including the Hayti folks, right? We spent a lot of time coming up with this plan, and it was based on their direct input. So the next step now that we have a development partner is that they're going to be doing the same thing in terms of engaging those residents and other stakeholders in terms of what they're looking to do, how they're looking to do it, and how that community will have a voice or is being represented in what gets done. So that's a part of the process. It always has been what we do. So that's not changing. That's not any different than what we've done with all phases of Ddnp, as well as some of the other stuff that we've had to do.
You have any more questions for Mr. Scott?
I will say this. I think it's important that everyone understands how a request for a proposals process works, right? And all this is laid out in the proposal itself, right? Everything is there, and it tells you what you're expected to do, what you're expected to deliver, and how. And so you evaluate everybody equally based on those submissions. And that's a process that we've always used. We'll continue to use. There were, as I said, there were 11 proposals, but there were only 3 selected individuals or 3 selected proposals that ended up getting the green light. So, there's another, 9 proposals or 8 proposals that didn't get selected. And that's just part of the process. Any other questions?
Any other follow-up?
I have a question that's not necessarily related to that, but it's more for my day job. I'm wondering if we could get the demographics, the breakdown by age, in particular for all of the properties. I know I saw it for Liberty Street and 519 East Main because the organization I work for, we signed on to that partnership agreement with DCI. But I'm wondering if we could see that for the other organizations, or if I could just reach out to someone in your office and get that breakdown.
We can. You just have to get in line. But yes, we can certainly provide that information.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Scott? Well, Mr. Scott, we like I said, every time that you have come to our meetings, you've always been prepared to answer the hard questions. You've always been prepared to present, and your transparency is one that is sorely needed within all of our leadership here in Durham County. We appreciate you coming on, and you'll get extended an invitation again.
Anytime, just let me know, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you all. So thank you. And once you get the presentation, if you have other questions, feel free to reach out, and so I could provide you the answers that you request.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. If Ms. Black is still on the call, we can take a quick look at the agenda. I know we are running long on time here.
No, Ms. Black is not on. Terry Porter Holmes is going to take over. So I am going to pull up the agenda. I was actually going to do a time check to see if we are going to continue moving forward.
Yeah, I have talked to Mr. Johnson. We will delay his presentation until next month. But I wanted to see if there was any other small agenda items that we could squeeze in. And if not, those will also be pushed until next month. That's what happens when you have a presentation that good, that you just gotta sit on it for a little while. So.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna try to bring this agenda back up. I'm working with one screen tonight, so. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me try to make it a little bit larger for you. Okay, so we just completed item number 3.
We will forego Mr. Johnson's until next month. I'm sure Mr. Johnson is very upset about that. So we'll just move on to any other business. I do not see Ebony on the call. I do not see Alicia on the call. And so I didn't know if anybody that was on the Community Development Week, maybe Mr. Johnson could touch on it, actually went to one of the community partners that we've had and toured. If so, if anybody went, you can just kind of briefly describe what you experienced. If not, then we can wait until next month when Ebony is on the call so we can follow up.
Mr. Chair, I don't have anything to report on that. We did have the proclamation was presented that I accepted on the behalf of the Community Development Department and the CAC at the council meeting. And so I would just offer that, but I don't have any additional information on the event and whether they've materialized.
Thank you for that, Mr. Johnson. We appreciate you accepting that proclamation on our behalf. I will move forward to public questions and comments. I do not know how many people are watching on the YouTube, on the live. If you do not have any, then, we got to get some people. We need some people to listen to this conversation that we had today. So I'm encouraging all members to invite their friends, neighbors that live in this county to our meetings that we have once a month that are talking about these important issues, so we can get our number of YouTubers up a little bit. But I don't know if there's any questions or comments from the public. So I'll move forward to announcements. Any announcements? Mr. Johnson, any announcements?
The only announcement that I have with the presentation that I have that will be shared with you was presented to the city council last Thursday. It did receive the presentation well, has some updates in it. And also, it looks like the council will discuss actually the issue as it relates to jobs and housing at the next work session. I don't know that it's been scheduled as a formal agenda item, but they indicated that at the next work session, they want to take that up.
And that's good to hear. That is definitely good to hear on that. Other than that announcement, I would like to put in the minutes and remind members you get. I'm trying to remember how many absences you may get, and just be aware of that. How many? Is it 3 absences, Mr. John? I'm trying to remember how many absences that members can.
3.
Is it 3?
3.
So just be aware of that. Clearly we understand that things happen. Just be aware of that.
And the attendance report does go to the city council for their review.
Correct. And that's that. Other than that, we will see y'all in May. I think I need to check to see whether or not our meeting in May is going to be earlier because of the way how Memorial Weekend falls. Need to check that. We usually meet on.
I think that it is adjusted. We'll check that and get back with you.
Okay. So we will let everybody know about the next meeting date.
I think Ms. Eford has a question. I see her hand raised.
Oh, yeah. Right. Lee?
Chairman Barnes, 2 really brief things. And I did email you, but in case anyone else on the committee is interested, I'm on the Partnership for a Healthy Durham Health and Housing Committee, and they expressed an interest to connect with the various city and county committees, including ours, the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee and the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, who are working with that in order to kind of increase coordination among countywide efforts. So if anyone's interested, please, let me know if you'd like to either join our meetings or invite folks from that committee here. And also briefly, I was appointed to the Durham Racial Equity Commission. We had our first meeting last week, so I don't know what our kind of involvement is going to be, but there are folks on there who are on multiple boards, so I figure we're going to have some integration with that. But again, if any of you have any questions or suggestions for topics or things that we should approach on that committee, I know that they're still kind of in the planning and implementation stages for that. So just wanted to put those 2 things out there for this group.
Leah, I can just say I did get that email. I apologize for not responding, but we would love to hear from that organization. I'm sure that we could squeeze them in on next month's agenda. If you could just reach out and have, if you are going to be the point of contact or sending a point of contact either to an emailing myself or Mr. Johnson, that way we can get them on the agenda for next month. That'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. I'll let the co-chairs and the staff coordinator know and see if some or all of them can make it.
Awesome. Thank you for serving on multiple boards. It is a labor of love for free.
Chairman Barnes,
yes.
Hi, this is Dr. Hyman again, and I just wanted to let everybody know, you probably know already, that I am a finalist for the City Council at Large seat. I'm just blessed to get to this point, and we'll see what happens, but I just wanted to say thank you for those who have supported me this far, and just wanted to announce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holy Hyman. We wish you the best on that endeavor right there. Without further ado, if there's not any other announcements to make, I will definitely take a motion to adjourn, and we will see you all next month. And I hope you all enjoy this beautiful weather that we got going on. So I'll take a motion.
I'll motion.
Thank y'all. We'll see y'all next month.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good evening.